There's this really notable biblical scholar from back in the day, this German theologian named Martin Kahler, and he very famously said that the Gospels are passion narratives with really long introductions. So typically, I think when we think about the Gospels, we think of the Gospels as simply telling the story of Jesus going about the countryside, teaching people how to be nice and kind and polite. But this kind of gives us a new perspective. Again, the Gospels are passion narratives with really long introductions. Primarily, the Gospels are meant to tell us a story of God's rescue mission for us. It's a story about how God the Father sent his only begotten Son, the second person of the Trinity, to take on flesh by way of the incarnation, to dwell among us, certainly to set the foundation for the Holy Catholic Church, which would endure to this day. But mainly he comes to suffer and die on the cross, to bring about this definitive reconciliation between humanity and divinity, to set the stage for us becoming sons and daughters of Christ the King. Oh, and by the way, conquering sin and death. So that's the main premise or the main story behind the gospel text. Even if we don't know that, even if we don't immediately flag that, the devil has always known that. The whole point of Jesus coming to this earth is to carry out the mission of salvation. And so he pulls out all the stops. He tries to do everything he can to throw Christ off the beaten path, to dissuade him from accomplishing his particular mission. Certainly the devil works through human instruments. You see this, for example, when it comes to King Herod, the scribes and the Pharisees, trying to kill Jesus before his time, before he can get to Jerusalem to suffer and die on the cross. But also, primarily at the same time, the devil works through spiritual warfare, spiritual attacks, going the way of temptation. You see this at the beginning of the Gospels. This comes through in a really powerful sort of way when it comes to the Gospel of Mark. So, what you hear in the context of the Gospel of Mark, Jesus is baptized by his cousin, John the Baptist, in the River Jordan, and then immediately he's sent forth into the desert. So it's a desert experience, literally, before he begins his public ministry of teaching and preaching and casting out demons and whatnot. And while he's in the desert for 40 days and 40 nights, he is tempted relentlessly by the devil. So what you hear, the devil says, turn these stones into bread. Get in the top of that temple and throw yourself off. The angels will catch you. Bow down and worship me. I'll give you all sorts of nice stuff. You break it down, basically what the devil is doing. He's highlighting the classical substitutes for the reality of God: pleasure, power, and honor. Pursue these things as the ultimate good, the highest good, as opposed to doing the will of the Father for your particular life. I want you to kind of flag the brilliance of this particular temptation. So the devil knows he's talking to the Son of God, the Son of Man, the one who is the Christ. Probably, Jesus Christ will not be tempted or thrown off by temptations to do overtly evil things. Go punch that guy in the face, go rob the bank. But maybe I can throw him off by distracting him with the alternative good, the lesser good. What's the enemy of the best? The enemy of the best is not the worst. The enemy of the best is the good. Here's some alternative good you can pursue as opposed to doing God's particular will for your life. It's a very clever but diabolical temptation, pursuing, again, the lesser good, the alternative good, as opposed to the best, as opposed to God's particular will for your life. It's kind of interesting. In this particular context especially, the devil doesn't really care that Christ pursues something which is good as opposed to something which is overtly evil. All he cares about is that he doesn't do the will of his Father, to suffer and die on the cross for the salvation of the world. So here's pleasure, here's power, here's honor. The example that comes to mind, I remember back in the day when I was in the seminary studying for the Holy Priesthood, people would discover pretty early that I was a lawyer and that sort of thing. So they'll be like, hey, can't you be a lawyer and be married and still be a good person and get to heaven? What you want to say is, get behind me, Satan, but you can't say that because people take it the wrong way, right? But hopefully you get the point, right? It's not a question of like, what's the better vocation? The best vocation is the vocation that God is calling you to pursue. But the point still remains. It's so easy to distract ourselves from doing what the Father wants us to do. Because look, here's this thing that you could do. It's not evil. It's not wicked. It's good. You can still be a good person. God still loves you. You can still go to heaven. But you know in your heart of hearts, that's not what the Father is asking you to do. So when it comes to discernment, it's actually pretty easy. What does the Father call me to do? And I do that. That's the thing I'm called to pursue. That is the best thing for me to do with my life. Now you hold that thought and you think about today's gospel. So we talked about the beginning of the gospel, the temptation of Jesus in the desert. Today's gospel is all about the end of the story in a certain sense. So this is from the Gospel of Luke, chapter 23. This story always comes up on the occasion of Christ the King. So Jesus Christ is dying. So he's on the cross. He's been whipped, he's been beaten, he's been scourged. He is minutes from death. All he has to do is hang on. Just hang on and suffer and die, and you will bring about the salvation of the world. And the devil is kind of in a panic. So what the devil does, he launches this final attack. This is the final temptation of Christ, the last temptation of Christ. So what the devil says to the Lord over and over again is some version of this. If you are the Christ, if you are the chosen one, if you are truly God's son, save yourself. Destroy your enemies. Destroy us. Use your power to bend the will of the holy people of God to your will. This is what it means to be powerful. This is what it means to be king. If you don't do this, you are weak and you are pathetic. Of course, the Lord recognizes this is a temptation. He holds on, he doesn't listen to the devil. In a couple of minutes, he dies, and he brings about the salvation of the world. I was trying to think of a contemporary example just to kind of make this thing real. One of the most popular superheroes of all time is Spider-Man. And people love Spider-Man for all sorts of different reasons. A lot of kids love his suit. They like the fact that he's red. Oftentimes what you hear is that I like Spider-Man because he's ordinary, unlike, say, Superman or Batman or Wonder Woman. So in the early versions of Spider-Man in the comic books, oftentimes he'd be portrayed as a kid. He's often portrayed as this kid who's struggling to pass his exams, to pay his rents. And so there was something really appealing and attractive about a superhero being someone like us. At the same time, something I've always loved about Spider-Man mythology is the fact that oftentimes his enemies are his friends, often his best friends. The lizard is one of his favorite teachers. Dr. Octopus is sort of a father figure. In the early versions of the comics, what you would find is that Spider-Man's arch nemesis, the Green Goblin, was often his best friend in the world. And these are the people he's fighting. It adds a little something when it comes to Spider-Man's battles with these people. It's not simply saving the world from their villainous acts. He's trying to save them because they're my friends and because I love them, even though they don't necessarily love me back. It's the heart of the Christian ethos. Love the sinner, hate the sin. This comes true in a really powerful sort of way in one of the most recent Spider-Man movies, Spider-Man No Way Home. So basically at the beginning, what you find is that Spider-Man, he encounters all these villains from different dimensions, different universes, if you will. And he discovers early on that if I send them back, they will die. And so I take it upon myself to help them, to lead them to the good, to save them. And they don't appreciate it. They fight with him, they beat him, they hurt him. And before you know it, he's bloodied, he's broken, he has broken ribs, he's surrounded by rubble, he's surrounded by flames even. And in the meantime, he has in the back of his mind the words of his arch nemesis, the Green Goblin. Basically, during their last fight, the Green Goblin said to him, "You are strong enough to have it all, but you're too weak to take it. You're strong enough to have it all, but you're too weak to take it." A really concise summary of the world's perspective on power. What does it mean to have power from the worldly perspective? You cling, you possess, you seize. You try to pursue with all your might pleasure, power, and honor, to the extent of your ability, to the extent of your power. Everyone is doing that. That's the only way to become happy. As opposed to going the way of self-gift, as opposed to going the way of self-sacrifice. If you don't do this, even though the option is before you, you are weak and you are pathetic. So all this is playing out in the back of his mind. And so he's talking to his Aunt May. who's been mortally wounded, but he doesn't realize this at the time. So he says to his Aunt May, it's my fault. It's my fault. I should have just let them go. I should have just let them die. It was never my responsibility. And Aunt May steps up. She's very firm. She says, no, you were right. You have a gift. You have power. And with great power, there must also come great responsibility. And with that, she dies. And you fast forward to later on in the film, Spider-Man is talking to alternate versions of himself. So other Spider-Men from alternate dimensions, other universes. And he's recalling this conversation with Aunt May. And he says, Aunt May said to me, with great power. And they finished it. They finished the line. Comes great responsibility. And he's like, how do you know that? And what they say is that the way our lives played out was unique and specific to us because we're all different. But the thing that's common in all our lives is we heard that line. With great power comes great responsibility. It's a very brilliant twist in the narrative. Basically, what's being conveyed is that the prerequisite to being great, the prerequisite to being a hero, you need to understand this point. With great power comes great responsibility. If you don't understand that, you cannot be Spider-Man. You cannot be Spider-Man. Now, I want to be clear about what this point conveys. What is being articulated here is what it truly means to have power. Anyone can kick up a fuss. Anyone can stomp their feet and be a petulant child or a wild beast in the wilderness. Anyone can pursue life like, look, this is what I want when I want it, in the way that I want it. Gimme, gimme, gimme. Real power, though, is strength with focus, strength with discipline, strength with intentionality. I look at the world, it's chaotic. I look at the earthquake, which is my heart. At the same time, despite all these things, God, what do you want me to do to move the situation along? To bring good to the situation which is difficult and painful and fraught with evil and wickedness. And we discover that. That's what you do. In the meantime, guard your heart. Don't give in to bitterness. Don't give in to cynicism. Persevere in hope. Persevere in a stance of suffering love. Shades of 1 Corinthians chapter 13. Like, what is love? Love is patience. Love is kind. Love is never arrogant or boastful or rude. Love hopes for all things. Love believes all things. Love suffers all things. Love endures all things. Love endures to the end. That is Christian love. That's the love which is required to change the world, and that's what it means to be king as Christ is king.